So it's been 6 months, and now we're back in Canada, and we're slowly trying to piece our lives back together and start afresh. The past 6 months that we were in China were obviously really difficult, and teaching kids each and every day after what happened, there was a huge extent of us avoiding dealing with our emotions and grief and what happened. So since we've been back, we've kind of been having to go through that again. But at least now here we've got the option of doing some counselling. So we're going to be starting doing that soon. But it kind of feels like you've 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in that you're having to go over and retread what you've done before. And it's not a linear thing. I just thought, progressively things would get better, but it doesn't seem to work like that. It seems to be up, down, up, down. It's really hard to describe, but it's kind of like a constant invisible weight that you feel and your partner feels, but it's not always apparent to people around you, especially when you're just getting on with your day-to-day life. One of the things that people don't realize as well is that it always comes back to you, in the sense that every time you do something from now on, it's the first time. So, obviously we wanted it to be like the first time with her for like our birthdays, but instead of it being a good day, it's actually the first time without her on a birthday. And whenever you go to the bank, the dentist, whenever you see people you've not seen for a long time, it's always the first time. And especially like the day-to-day stuff, going to the bank, they're going to ask you. Going to the dentist, they're going to ask you, how is she? And then you're going to have to explain, and it becomes a whole thing, and you just kind of avoid doing the daily life stuff. I mean, that was one of the big reasons that we left China, is that we just didn't want to deal with having to go over it again. And it's funny as well, like coming back and seeing family. It's twofold. You're happy to see people, and they're very happy to see you. But when you're returning, it doesn't feel like a happy time. It feels like you're coming back with your tail between your legs. Like you failed. So nowadays, we kind of have to plan what we're doing and think about it a little bit more, because there are things that come up that like raise your emotions. Like, for example, the other day we went to see Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I didn't really look into the plot so much because I didn't want to spoil myself, but it was a movie heavily focused on father and daughter relationships, and the relationship that they had is what I wanted. So you kind of have to avoid putting yourself in certain situations. And one thing I would definitely say as well is it's always going to hurt. There's no doubt about that. But what we found is if you put off dealing with it, and avoid dealing with it, then it builds. I remember when I was studying counselling and reading a book on Carl Jung, and it was Meet the Shadow, said that if you don't acknowledge the shadow, it grows and it can like overtake, and that's kind of what it feels like sometimes, especially with us when we kind of like push down our emotions a bit so we can get through that school year, is that things have grown emotionally, our grief, in that things trigger us, I guess is the word, or bring it up, or small things affect us more, and it becomes harder to control your emotions. So it's really something you can't avoid, and you've just got to get in there and experience it and feel it. We're hoping that this counselling is going to help, and I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure it will, because I've got some experience with that, with my study of it. So I know how it sort of works. It's always good to talk to someone that's not family or friends or your partner, because there's always going to be an element where you feel judged, and maybe you censor what you say, because after a while, especially talking with your partner and stuff like that, they didn't sleep through the night. Hey honey, why didn't you sleep through the night? Do you want to talk about it? Well, remember that thing that we talked about 2 days ago? Yeah, it's the same thing. So it's a cycle, and it's good to kind of talk outside of your circle and maybe get a new perspective that's not so involved. So we're hoping this will be good, but I think it's one of those things that's just not ever going to go away. It's always going to be there, but finding ways to cope and manage it is good. And well, I'll keep you updated, and I'll let you know how it goes.